don't think there's anything that could be deemed a process which covers all the bases, so to speak. I mean, look, yes, there's a process. In order to start shooting, you have to put the camera on some sort of device, or you want to hand hold it, you have to make a choice there. There are some basic things that are about more logistical than anything else. The use of equipment, knowing what equipment could do, knowing which tool to use. But an actual process, you know, there are many people who just work it out. There are many people who kind of write as they go along. The script for Viaggio in Italia, A Voyage Through Italy by Rossellini was framed. I saw it framed on a wall in an apartment in Rome. It was one page, paragraph. I'm not saying everybody does that. Fellini, when he would shoot, I was on a set a number of times, but in 1980, 81, doing City of Women. He had 5 different sets on the same stage, and there was constant talking and shouting and yelling, and he was running up and down, and people laughing, people arguing. In the meantime, he was shooting. He was shooting. I remember people saying, well, what's going on? He said, well, he's shooting over here. It was a very different way of shooting. Of course, in Italy, they don't use sync sound, so the sets everybody's used to talking loudly, you know? And as he was shooting, we were guests on the set. He would come over and talk to us, and he'd go back to the shot. So it's a very different way of working, a very different process. There are filmmakers who are more, there are filmmakers who have an editor whom they trust, who knows their style, who knows who they are, and has worked with them a long time, editing while they're shooting. The film could be put together 2 weeks after the picture's finished wrapping shooting. I like to wait until I finish shooting and work with my editor, you know? And so what I'm saying is that there is no process. And when people talk to you about a process, you might as well open a textbook. A textbook give you some basic facts, logistics, facts, that sort of thing. But whether good or bad, it's art. Meaning the quality of it, I don't know. It depends on the person. The quality of your own work, I don't know. You just know you have to do it. So in that doing of it, you are making judgments. Whether the quality of the judgment is something that's going to last, I mean, something that people 50 years from now, who knows, you know? Do you feel good about it? Mm-hmm. Very often people feel terrible about some of it, and it's quite good to many people. So there really is no process. I mean, yes, to a certain extent, it would be good to talk to the costume person before shooting. Okay? I mean, it's common sense. Preparation seems to be good, especially for narrative cinema, that sort of thing, seems to be, which means you should talk to your director of photography, talk to your locations people, describe what you want. This is aside from working with writers or writing it yourself, working with the actors. All of this sort of thing is a common sense, I think. The actual logistics and the Rubik cube of making a film is something that you may need guidance with people who are real pros at it. I mean, for example, Michael Ballhaus, when we were doing Last Temptation of Christ, I had worked on we worked on the schedule and all of this sort of thing, and we had it ready. The first scene in the script was going to be the first thing we shot. And I was all ready to do it. And a week and a half or 2 weeks before shooting, Michael came to me and said, look, instead of the first scene, we should go to there's a scene with a crucifixion of a guy who's called a zealot. He said, we should shoot that first. It's daylight, the light will be right. We get 3 days of daylight out of the way, and then we go indoors. And for whatever reasons, it was made clear to me that that was the most sensible way of going because of budget and schedule. And I wanted the luxury of continuity. I couldn't have it. And so this is what I mean about it. There is no process. So, there's a process in that you must rely on those who know how to get the things done. What those things are come from you. And is it practical or not? You know, is it practical for the amount of money you have, the amount of days you have, the people you're working with, that sort of thing? And if it's not, how could they get close enough to what you'd like, you know? A life of a film is perceived differently from different filmmakers, you know. For me, it means allowing the film to have its own life at times and to be able to take the chances to burst the seams of the picture and for us to take advantage of the possibility of special things that would happen within the scene, with the actors, with the camera, with the light, all of this. You know, there are many films that have been made and many continue to be made where, in a sense, they're almost like director-free. They're like a succession of line readings, in a sense, a good script, really good actors, and you can enjoy it. But I don't feel it's cinema. I don't feel that it's a film somehow. Because here's the thing, you have to stay open. You have to stay open to what's happening right in front of you, around you, at every single moment as you envision a scene, as you work on the scene with the crew and with the cast. You design it in your head, of course. You know even the lenses you want to use in some cases. You design the camera moves, and the camera moves mean something, we hope. The cuts could be designed in such a way as to an editing pattern, you know. You work with the production designer, the costume designer, and then with, of course, the art director and the costume designer on the set, and then with the actors. And you shoot it, and something completely unexpected happens that adds new value to the scene. In the case of Goodfellas, for example, the third night of shooting, we because of schedule problems, we had to shoot this really important scene where the character of Stax, played by Sam Jackson, gets assassinated by Joe Pesci's character. And he had his friend with him, Frank. And we did all in one take. And it was before digital, so there were prosthetics and all kinds of, it was very complicated to do. But when Joe came in with Frank, said hello to Stax, and said, maybe some coffee, will you? He told Frank. So Frank's making the coffee.
Come on, Frankie will make coffee. Get it, Frankie, make coffee. I thought you had one of your bitches in here.
Yeah, I did. Where the fuck is she?
So he's got these hot books around, though, or a bitch or something.
Joe comes around in the frame, circles around, and finally surprises everyone.
You're late for your own fucking funeral.
And Frank comes out with the coffee pot, looking. He just took the coffee pot with him.
What the fuck you looking at?
So Joe told him,
Come on, make that coffee to go. Let's go.
they actually start to leave the room, and Frank is walking with the coffee pot. He said, no, it's a joke.
What the fuck you doing? It's a joke, a joke. Put the fucking pot down. You gonna take the coffee?
And so I began to get a sense of the horrifying humor and the dark humor of the picture and the story and the lifestyle of making jokes in circumstances like this and the psychopathology of it. And this is really coming out of working with the actors, and it happened repeatedly throughout that film. Or in the editing, for example, where you take in Goodfellas, where Maury keeps asking Jimmy to get his money for him. And they're in a bar. It's later in the picture. And you begin to hear Sunshine of Your Love, Cream. And at that point, you see Jimmy, played by Robert De Niro, looking around and checking out each one in the bar and realizing to himself that why should he have to share the loot? Why didn't he just kill them all, you know? But I had made a note that we move in on him, we shoot it at 36 frames a second or 32 frames a second. And when we were syncing up the music for the scene, a guitar riff hit right at the moment that Bob's eyes flared, and we realized this was it. This was the moment we were looking for. It was a combination of planning and the imagination on the page, 32 to 36 frames a second, a camera move in, and the editing of the picture a few months later using that piece of music.
When lights close the
And then even sometimes the surprises in the mix, like in Raging Bull or Frank Warner. We kept saying there's so many sounds of punches and these fight scenes. And there was one big moment. I think Jake swings his arm into frame and glove smashes into the head of the other fighter, knocks him out, whatever. We were sitting there saying, it's just, how many more ways could we express the sounds of gloves slamming against flesh or whatever, or the speed of the glove going right past you, because a lot of the sound effects in those scenes in the ring were meant to be, just as the visuals were meant to be, impressions of how Jake saw it in the ring, not from people outside the ring, but how you perceive reality after being punched or throwing punches and losing your breath and trying to stay in shape and trying to stay on your feet. And so everything was twisted and turned in a way. So Frank was thinking, he said, what if we take out the sound? I said, yeah, let's do that. And sure enough, that's how it worked out. But again, it was created there in the mix, with all of us working together. And so the point is, you always really have to stay alive to what's happening in front of you, right in front of you. And you could have some call in a negative way, preconceived ideas, but as long as the philosophy of the idea is still retained, you could change the aspects of it. You could change the elements which create the concept of the shot. And so, I think the picture itself takes over in a way.